of University Senate. We also, during University Senate last week, we acknowledged that there was a protest on Jayhawk Boulevard, and then which was organized by students. Next up, let's see, Watkins merger with the health system. Currently, work groups haven't been meeting as we are waiting for the executive team to finalize on an agreement, such as the non-negotiables and all. Next thing, Watkins for All, which is the initiative that is what the UDK has termed. Sorry, someone's on the Microsoft Teams. So Watkins for All is the initiative that some individuals within Senate have started can someone go on Microsoft Teams and tell them to join the Zoom and not Microsoft Teams? Sorry. So Watkins for All is an initiative where there's an opportunity to change healthcare at KU significantly. So that's going to be probably our discussion tonight about healthcare at KU. So the two big proposals that are currently on the table are one, increasing the fee significantly and making all services at Watkins free to students. And then the second one, from my understanding, is where we reinvest fee dollars into student insurance, where students have the opportunity to choose where they get to go to for healthcare. But we'll get more into that during our discussion. I did go to all 4 work group meetings, and they were very productive, but it was kind of unfortunate to see that there wasn't much student in attendance other than the organizers of the meetings. So that's something to note there. Next up, Microsoft Teams. Everybody here should be added to Microsoft Teams. This has been a push of mine for the past couple of months since we went all virtual, something that IT has heavily invested in. So if you've ever used Slack or any, GroupMe is kind of like Slack, but Microsoft Teams takes it to another level where we're able to use a lot more paid features since the university is investing in that. So Finance Committee was officially moved to Microsoft Teams as of last night or 2 nights ago, and then all the other committees. I'm going to go ahead and look for a motion to add more time, or you guys can end my speech. Chat. Um, 3 minutes and second.
Second.
Okay, with that, if you are okay to give me 3 more minutes, go ahead and say aye, or use the yes or no icons on your participants side panel. Okay, with that, I got mostly all yeses and no nos. I'm going to go ahead and continue for 3 more minutes. So Microsoft Teams has fully been implemented for Finance Committee. All the other committees will be voting tonight to see if they can get onto Microsoft Teams. What this will do is bring everybody to one platform. So if someone from Finance Committee wants to attend another committee tonight, they can easily be already in their channel and see what they're discussing, see their minutes, see their files. It's not going to be it has been historically, where you have to attend the meeting to get any information about that meeting. So personally, I feel like Microsoft Teams will be changing Finance Committee significant, or not just Finance Committee, Student Senate significantly, making our organization more accessible to students than ever before. Next up, something new we're gonna be talking about tonight is gonna be the research on student groups that I've been working on, and we're probably gonna create a work group from this committee to dive more deep into that research, as it is about 400 groups that we're looking at. So I'll be asking for some people to volunteer to join that group. Its commitment level is going to be about 1 extra meeting every 2 weeks, where we gather together and talk about what the research has shown. Other things that are going on within Student Senate, DEI has a couple of work groups that they're focusing on Watkins and CAPS. They also have a work group around policing on campus, and the PSO with Slack. UA is discussing food insecurity on campus. So, and then there's some exec staff that are also working on that with CCO. So if you've seen any fundraisers going around for CCO, that is in works with them. So I'm also reaching out to CCO to see how we can better help them with the Student Senate. And I found out today we can actually tap into the Senate Reserve through there is a process to tap into the Senate reserves through going through Finance Committee and then 3/4 vote, I believe, through full Senate. But we can talk about that more once we have a bill to go through that. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and open up myself to questions if anyone has any. Okay, I don't see any questions. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Vice Chair Sam Harder.
Hello, everyone. Not many updates for me, but on the Student Senate Rules and Regulations Rewrite Committee, making very fast progress, hoping to get that the final draft finalized here in the next maybe month or two. Not many updates about like Finance Committee specifically, just kind of making the language more readable and easier to access. Not many structural updates, but if y'all have any concerns about what's in SSRR, talk to me and I'll raise those in that committee. Also, our discussion period is going to be over continuing the discussion about healthcare at KU. So looking forward to that. Thank you.
Any questions for Sam? Okay, next up is going to be our Secretary, Julius Chopperman.
Okay, so my big update is everyone in the Zoom chat, I'm going to send a really fun link and you're all going to click on it. And this is how we're doing attendance tonight. So it's going to take you to Rock Chalk Central and you're going to log in. And that's how I'm going to see everybody's here. And so once I send that out, please do that. If it doesn't work, private message me and we'll help you get it figured out. In other updates, I will have some updates on our online fee committee in the coming weeks. We have another meeting to discuss that this week. So, okay, I'm sending the link now. It's a fun one.
Yeah, so if everyone can take a couple seconds, click on the link. Were you able to join the Zoom? Perfect. Go ahead and click on the link. Thank you.
Is that working for everyone?
Or are we just supposed to RSVP?
It should automatically count you for attendance.
Is it? It's just the login, right?
Yes, you log in, it automatically put you down as attending this meeting. So,
Sounds good.
okay, any questions for Julia? I do not see any questions. With that, we're going to go ahead and move on to the treasurers. So Andrea and Sadie.
Hello, everybody. As he said, my name is Andrew. I'm the treasurer. That's what people keep telling me anyway, so I figured probably true at this point. Some stuff that I've been working on is a lot of what I do is the day-to-day work with student groups. So if a group that received funding in the past wants to use it, or a group that needs funding wants to apply for it, that typically goes through Sadie and I, so we do a lot of work there. Additionally, as Julia already mentioned, we are moving ahead with trying to make an online version of the student fee, because some services that are offered are pretty easily translated to online, whereas some are more difficult to translate. So we want to make sure that people are being charged for what they truly have access to. Those are probably, another thing is, in addition to the SSRR rewrite committee, we're also looking at, we have a smaller group that's looking at redoing or overhauling the budget code, mostly just to make it shorter and simpler, easier to read than it currently is, because right now it's like 7 or 8 pages of legalese that honestly no one really enjoys reading, and unless you're a lawyer or pre-law student, I guess you might. See, those are probably the big areas. Then there are always little miscellaneous kinds of tasks that I have to deal with. So I'll hand off to Sadie.
Andrew mostly covered it, but some of the things that I've been working on are researching into what Hamad mentioned earlier with the reserves and what that'll look like, as well as looking into local ordinances and state ordinances and how they would impact events and how that would impact thereafter our funding of those events, if that makes sense. And then other than that, I've been communicating with groups who received line item funding last year and to like helping them figure out how to spend their money and what will be allowed in terms of that. And I think that's some of the big stuff that I've been working on. Oh, and then also I've been like trying to figure out what's going to happen in terms of spring 2021 with funding travel, because sometimes those requests, especially if they happen in the early parts of the semester, do come through finance, and they'll seek funding for that. So yeah, just a lot of like researchy stuff, I guess.
Okay, any questions for our treasurers? Okay, with that, we're going to go ahead and go to our Associate Senator, Crystal Lee.
Hi. Okay, so for full Senate last week, we had 2 guest speakers, Diana Mawat and then Dr. Pavika Sarapalli. So they kind of spoke about the Watkins Health Center, and then the minutes got approved. There was a resolution to commemorate the life of Reginald L. Robinson, and that was approved. For discussion, there was like a discussion for funding for Student United Way, and that was approved for a movie night to promote voting. And then also a discussion for like the future of healthcare at KU. And then I guess like Hamad has been through 4 of the sessions offered to discuss this topic, so he's a lot more knowledgeable on with regard to that topic. So if you have any questions, you could reach out to Hamad. As for officer reports, they were sent out in an email to full Senate. And so like a quick gist was of what people were working on are like gender neutral restrooms, the future of healthcare, including potential mergers and researching insurance, food insecurity, lowering the cost of meals for those in quarantine or isolation without a dining plan, and then civic engagement. And that's all I have.
Okay, any questions for Crystal? No questions, and we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next item of our agenda, which is gonna be elections. So it looks like we had one more advisory board that we have not elected yet, so they do need one more individual for SAPEC. SAPEC, which stands for does anyone know the exact
I believe it stands for the Sexual Assault Prevention and Education Center.
Thank you, Andrew. So the SAPEC Advisory Board, as far as the charges go, they help evaluate how to best utilize the newly acquired fees for funding. So they'll meet with their executive director, and then they also have peer educators that work with them. So they also are on that advisory board according to SSRR. So we're going to go ahead and open our nominations up for one person. And as far as commitment wise, I don't feel like this advisory board is going to have much, but they do require one. SSR requires at least one person from finance committee be present there. So nomination pool is now open. If anyone wants to nominate someone or nominate themselves, you can go ahead and message me in the chat, or you can verbalize that. Lee Taylor, you were nominated. Would you like to accept your nomination?
I will pass. Thank you, though.
Okay. Anyone? So this is a good question. Andrew, are we allowed to table this, or are we required to elect someone today?
Well, I mean, I would probably nominate Raina.
Raina, would you like to accept?
Sure.
Okay. Wesley, you were nominated. Would you like to accept?
No thanks.
Okay. Anyone else want to nominate someone before I close it? And we're going to go ahead and close it. And can I get a motion to acclimate Raina, please? Okay, motion by Brandon, seconded by... Can I get a second, please? Okay, by Ariana. With that, we're going to go ahead and acclimate Raina for the SAFEC Advisory Board, and this is going to be an icon vote on your participants panel. Yes for approve, no for against, and then if you want to abstain, click go faster. Andrew, let's go slower.
It's because I'm a non-voting member, so I can't even abstain.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, that's totally fine with me. With that, Raina, congratulations. You are a representative on the SAFEC Advisory Board. Okay. With that, we're going to go ahead and move into our regular agenda. First up, we're going to have Bill 2021-009, Bill to fund CubeSat. Is the student senator that wrote that bill here, which was Max.
I am here. Can you guys hear me?
Yep. The floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. So this is a pretty straightforward bill. My screen's still blurry, so I can't really read off of it. I don't know if that's for anyone else, but it is $5,000 for KUBSat to fund specific satellite parts for their clubs. And I am not an expert on satellites, so I think a member of their club is in attendance here to speak on what exactly that $5,000 will be used for. So I'll turn it over to them if they're here.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, so we were seeking funding, $5,000, to actually supply us with 2 components of the satellite. The first of which is the transceiver, means of communication with the satellite once it's in space. We are also seeking to fund the onboard computer for the satellite, which would of course be the control system and monitoring systems.
Okay, I believe we have time for questions. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Raise your hand in the participants channel, or when you go to the participants channel, there should be a raise hand icon. Brandon, you're up.
So let's see, does it have to be $5,000, or like have you guys requested funding from any other source?
We have requested funding from other sources as well. The reason we settled upon the $5,000 request is the sum of the transceiver, which is $1,375, and the onboard computer system, which is the remainder of the $5,000, gets us to the $5,000 number. That was our logic for that specific number. And the other sources that we have requested funding from are allocated currently. In the event they are approved, they are still allocated for other components.
Thank
Okay,
you.
next up, Camden.
Is this satellite like going in a weather balloon? Is it a rocket? Who's launching this? Is this a KU thing or?
The School of Engineering, there's a few of us constructing it. We have disciplines from all the engineering practices. The satellite will be launched via a NASA initiative. They have a CubeSat initiative that they kind of pair collegiate teams like ourselves with launch vehicles. And through that channel is how we'll get the device into space.
Thank you.
Yes, Arno, did you have something?
Sorry, I wanted to add there. I'm the project manager on the satellite. It is a unique opportunity as Kansas is one of the few states that have not launched the satellite at this point. And the NASA initiative that Lee is talking about, their goal is to launch one satellite from every single state. So we are currently working on the first satellite ever designed to be launched from Kansas and put up into orbit.
Okay, next up, Wesley.
I have a question to see if you have sought any like sort of extra or alternative sources of funding from the School of Engineering, and I also have a question for the treasurer and how much of the unallocated fund is there still, since it hasn't been mentioned yet.
Let's go ahead and answer the student group's question first, and then we can do the treasurer's.
Okay. We have sought funding from both the aerospace engineering departments and currently have a meeting set up Friday with the electrical engineering department, as this club does offer large benefits to both of those specifically.
I'd also like to add to that, we have in the past been working with the aerospace department. They have donated on the order of about $15,000 monetarily to our organization to get the satellite taken care of. And then on the order of another $130,000 of donations regarding renovations for a laboratory and restricted access to that laboratory as need be.
Okay, before the treasurers answer the question, can you guys, can I get a motion to extend time by 5 minutes? Perfect. Motion by Brandon. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Camden. And this is going to be an icon vote. If you are wanting to extend the time, click yes. If you do not and want to move on from this bill, click no. And if you cannot vote or need to abstain, use faster / go slower. Okay, we're going to go ahead and give 5 more minutes. Treasurers, please answer your question then.
So currently, after last cycle, the unallocated amount is at $43,127, and we started the year at $45,000. So applications have been pretty slow so far this year. So we definitely have more than enough to cover this and still be fine in the long haul.
Okay, Brandon.
So I believe we funded you guys last year. You guys didn't put a satellite up last year with NASA's program.
Lee, do you want me to take this one?
Yes, I was going to direct that to Arno.
All right. Brendan, yes, you did actually. I remember you asking me in the last year's meeting as well, or talking to you about this last year. You did fund us last year. Student Senate was fantastic and helped us achieve major goals last year. There's a lot of work involved in a project like this. So last year we were slated to launch in May of 2021. Now with the coronavirus pandemic and everything else that's happened since then, everybody's launch dates, not just KU, but the Space Force, the SpaceX, everyone's launch dates have been pushed back significantly. As a result, our launch date has been pushed back to 2022. There is a possibility that we will launch earlier than that in 2021,
Go ahead
probably
and wave
December.
your hands so it catches your camera.
But hello.
We can still hear you.
Okay. But you guys did fund us last year. We are still working. The money that you guys provided for us last year, actually, we ordered all of the parts we need to finish the satellite in January. They came from Bulgaria. So there was a lot of trade tariffs and difficult things that we had never dealt with before, but they did arrive finally in about May of 2020. The summer was difficult for the members to obviously be on campus to work on this stuff in person. But we now that we're all on campus, things are moving forward pretty rapidly. We've begun testing on a multitude of different things, and the funds you guys provided last year were absolutely instrumental.
Thank you.
Next up, Jesse. Jesse, I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry. Okay. Well, so since Brandon brought up that you presented last year, this probably is covered then. But can you please talk to us a little bit about the purpose of launching the satellite and what you will be able to do with the information that you collect with the satellite?
Arno, as the project engineer, do you want to take that one?
I can do that. So it's a really, really good question. It's a multiple faceted approach with the satellite. Any good satellite, any good science has to have some form of a science objective, a payload of some sorts. We have two payloads on our satellite. We've partnered with the School of Physics on campus. One is looking for different types of radiation that hit the Earth, specifically coming from deep cosmic radiation and how maybe solar storms will influence Earth's magnetosphere, which in turn influences everything from communication to the world stock market with how the information is passed back and forth. And then the other payload is looking at calibrating scientific equipment on the ground at McMurdo Station in Antarctica. It emits basically an RF pulse, a radio frequency pulse that mimics a very specific type of radiation, and we calibrate those antennas on the ground. And those antennas look at information regarding climate change and how the radiation that hits those portions of the Earth are affected by that specific type of radiation. So the information we gather can be used for physics, PhDs or defenses, dissertations, theses, and all those different kinds of stuff. And also provides, on the other end, it provides the people who are part of the organization a huge opportunity to touch a very multifaceted program, whether it's working on the satellite itself or going out and getting funding or dealing with a whole host of other things as well.
Okay, with that, I'm looking for a motion to extend time, please. Or a motion to call the question with knowing that there's two questions still on the floor. Okay, motion to extend by 2 questions. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Jesse. With that, we're going to go ahead and do an icon vote. Yes for 2 more questions, and no if you want to go against that, and slower / flash, go faster if you want to abstain or a non-voting member. With that, we have 2 more questions. First up is going to be Wesley.
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier that that you bought all the parts needed for the satellite already. So what would the purpose of the 2 new parts be? And gosh, I had another question. One moment.
Go ahead and
So
answer
the
this.
time sensitivity. How time sensitive is receiving this funding for your club?
I will speak to the first part. You mentioned all of the components being previously purchased. In fact, we do have donated components for the transceiver and the onboard computer. Those were donated by the company Tyvac, and we seek funding for these devices not only to act as a backup or a secondary in the event that these devices become damaged during testing that NASA is requiring of us. We also seek this funding because we are currently in the development of CubeSat 2, which would be launched hopefully 1 year following the launch of CubeSat 1. So in the event CubeSat 1 components fail during testing, these components would immediately replace them and not delay launching. In the event no failures occur, we would be able to utilize these equipments on CubeSat 2. And to the second part, I believe I will let Arno speak to that.
Yeah. Just to clarify, that was the second question was in regards of how time sensitive we are, right?
Yes. How time sensitive how time sensitive obtaining this extra funding for, I guess, these spare parts will be.
Gotcha. Another really, really good question, actually. A lot of the stuff that we're currently working on right now, or that we have purchased in the past and whatnot, come with very long lead times. So, as an example, our electrical power system has an 8-week lead time. So once we order it, we have to wait 8 weeks before it's even available for them to ship it to us. Not to mention how long is it going to take if it's an out of country order that's coming to us. So these parts tend to have very, very long lead times, and if we are not acting ahead of time, planning to mitigate risk and working ahead of schedule, it does possibly represent a complete delay in a launch. What that furthermore represents, actually, though, is slightly more frightening. If KU commits as a university to a specific launch manifest, basically what launch provider we're going on, whether that be ULA or SpaceX on Falcon 9 or something like that, if we get delayed after we have committed to that launch, KU is then responsible for paying a $60,000 launch fee. If we do not delay and we get on that launch fee is covered through NASA through the specific program. So making sure we are ahead of schedule on all of our parts and we have the items that we need ahead of time is crucial.
Okay, and with that, we are out of time, and I'm looking for a motion to call the question. A motion by Brandon, and I'm looking for a second.
Second.
Second by Camden, and this is going to be a poll vote. And there should be a poll on your screen now. You get about 5 more seconds. Everybody should be able to vote for something. Okay, the bill is approved, 15-0. With that, you guys can go ahead and go to your next student group. And good luck. Next up on our agenda, I'm gonna ask for a motion to untable Bill 2020-008, which was tabled last cycle. Motion by Brandon. And seconded. Looking for a second. By Lily. Perfect. With that, this is a poll vote or an icon vote on the panel. Participants channel. Please go ahead and click yes if you want to untable that bill, as we can go ahead and discuss that. Okay, with that, it is untabled, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, hold up. Well, Brandon, you can go ahead and start talking about it while I pull it up.
Hi there, everybody. I introduced this bill about 2 weeks ago. I think we had a provision agreement that students would work to social distance at any event we would approve that is a social event under this bill. Again, it's to promote camaraderie and community. Last week we had a bill created in full Senate on I can't remember what the term is called for in committee basically, and that was definitely a social event. We kind of went against SSRRs there, and again, this bill would kind of help us stop going against our own rules and regulations. Are there any questions about this bill?
If there are no questions, okay, Wesley, go for it.
The first would be, so we tabled it the first time because what we decided was that we need to have Senate, and specifically the Senate leadership, focus on and figure out how much money they want to spend on, helping students in either isolation with the dining issues or with food insecurity, since the Board of Regents allowed Student Senate to do all of these things. And then it would come back when we figured out how much Senate wants to spend on it, and then how much money would be free. Neither of those things happened yet, and in fact, I have my club, Against Rising Tuition. Our hardworking members have been collecting testimony from students in isolation and in the scholarship halls who have to deal with all these issues that KU caused. And I'd like to give a negative speech in order to, at some point during this, in order to show you guys what they said and show you what Student Senate should be focusing on spending its money on right now instead of social events.
Okay, I will write that down that you have a negative speech. Anyone else have any questions before we go into a negative speech? Okay, with that, Wesley, you have 3 minutes for a negative speech. Your time starts. Or do you need to share your screen?
Yes.
You should be able to do it now.
Okay, so a couple students have sent in so the complaints that they've had with KU's policies lately, and the issues that they've caused, including, for example, shutting down the scholarship hall dining plans and forcing them to use KU dining plans. They're shutting down the scholarship hall kitchens and forcing them to use the flawed KU dining plans that force them to skip meals, and then also what it's like currently in Naismith Hall for the 29 students who are quarantining there right now, according to the Lawrence Journal World. To start off on the food issues, currently, as Joe Proctor sent in order for me to tell Senate, people's needs are not being met. They were told to skip meals. That means just some days don't eat. They can't use their kitchen, so they can't cook their own meals. So KU kind of told them to get bent, and that they don't get to eat those days. And the same thing goes for people with dietary restrictions. They're just out of luck. When normally they wouldn't have their food needs met by the scholarship hall and by the communal kitchens. The second issue is that the dining halls aren't even any safer than the kitchens would be. Dining hall employees not wearing their masks, and dining hall employees not keeping the place adequately cleaned. Joe even commented that we were repeatedly assured that the dining hall would be the safest option, but how can it be if the tables are not cleaned until the end of the day? Then as for the scholarship halls themselves, they have been pretty bad this year. Heating and cooling has been worse than normal, and then last year when they did receive food shipments, KU Housing was very behind on even keeping them on time or giving them good produce. But it's still better than the dining plans currently. And then this is an issue that I brought up before to Senate and AURH and to KU in general. There's a disparity on who gets safety during winter storms and who doesn't. Scholarship halls currently get shafted, and that they don't get de-icer or anything along their sidewalks, and they don't have a bus stop, they don't have any of that. So they just have to either walk up icy stairs or an equally icy steep hill. I pointed that out before with Downs Hall getting salt and de-icer while Oliver Hall didn't and other dorms didn't. Essentially, KU has an issue where they prioritize higher income areas and they make sure those are as safe as possible, and they shovel the snow and they do all that, while other areas, especially low income areas on campus or areas where there's a concentration of low income students, they're screwed. And then to the mold in
With that,
Naismith.
looking for to extend time, motion to extend time, or Brandon.
Motion to extend time by 5 minutes.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Crystal. With that, this is an icon vote. Yes to extend time by 5 minutes. No to against. And if you want to abstain, go faster or go slower. With that, the yeses have it, and you have 5 more minutes, Wesley.
Okay.
Go for it.
Emma lived through isolation, and she sent in to the Against Rising Tuition email account with permission to use her name. All of them gave permissions to use their names. What it was like living in Naismith, living in isolations. So, Emma stayed in Naismith from September 7th to September 16th. It was absurdly moldy. And she also had asthma, so being in an incredibly old building that's moldy with asthma, and someone who has a respiratory disease is not great. She noticed mold on the walls, in the shower, and on the blinds, etc. These are some photos that she took at the time when she moved in, and she provided them to me to show you. She was given a towel little bigger than a hand towel for her in order to take a shower, and the blinds were completely broken and would never close, so she had to change in the closet that has no door because she didn't want people to be able to peep on her because the window was permanently sort of uncovered and open. And then the water as well in Naismith was orange when she first turned on the shower. And then this is the photo of the broken blinds. The single blanket she was given left her freezing every night, and the mattress was broken, so the springs would dig into her back. They are giving students who are in isolation with a respiratory disease rooms that are filled with mold, broken blinds, and broken mattresses. What? Senate can work to fix this, and they have the money to, and they have the power to, thanks to the Board of Regents. These are the things we need to be prioritizing. And she said that isolation was 10 times worse than COVID, and that students should be able to have the ability to sit in their doorways and talk with others in order to be able to socialize a bit. And then here's a photo of just mold on the doors because the paper is rotting. Where she talked about a friend where they shut off the air conditioner on her and the EMTs had to come and give her an IV because her temp was 105. Students definitely need to be checked on once a day as well, because if she had waited just a little bit longer to go downstairs and get help, something terrible might have happened. So students aren't even being checked up on in their rooms. They have to go down if they need help. So they're just being dropped off in moldy rooms with broken mattresses and orange water and thin blankets, and then they don't even get anyone checking in on them. You have to get up and go downstairs in order to get help, which let's imagine for a moment that you have really bad COVID-19 and it's hard for you to get up, let alone walk all the way to maybe the elevator or the stairs because it's already difficult for you to breathe. What are you supposed to do? This is not okay. And Student Senate, before we start funding more social groups, more social events, like what happened with the $700 2-hour movie night rental last week, this needs to be addressed. And there needs to be a set number for how much in that unaccoladed fund and how much of the different reserve funds that Student Senate has is going to go and help these people. These are not, while this specific event may have been isolated to this one person, we can use that to look at the general condition of KU, the general condition of Naismith, the general condition of how it is to have a dining plan and be a low-income student. For the dining plans, this can be fixed with a program available to all students, where if you have nothing to eat, Student Senate can use the tens of thousands of dollars sitting around in their bank accounts and get $8 meal swipes at the dining halls. And then if our student leaders can negotiate an even lower price, that'd be great. So that way they don't have to worry about running out of food in finals week, or the time leading up to finals week. And then for student housing and the horrid issues in Naismith, which, by the way, to get food, it is $5.50 for a bowl of cereal while living there. The Board of Regents allowed KU to use institutional funds, which would mean Student Senate funds as well, to subsidize housing and dining and other auxiliary enterprises. So Student Senate could give money to student housing, or even get it done themselves to make sure they're clean and safe. We can't vote for this bill and approve this bill to amend the Student Senate rules and regulations.
Okay, I have a motion from Brandon.
Motion to extend the speaker's time by 5 minutes.
I get a second? I'll need a second to move on.
I'll second.
Okay, I got a second from Sam Harder, and we're gonna go ahead and do an icon vote. Yes for 5 more minutes, no for no more 5 more minutes, and go slower, faster if you need to abstain or a non-voting member. With that, the yeses have it. You have 5 more minutes, Wesley.
All right, thank you. Student Senate cannot ethically or morally, or any reason you could come up with, any decision-making framework, approve something that'll make it easier to fund social events and things that aren't just the vital needs that students have right now in these crises happening on campus that KU, for the most part, caused itself. KU Student Senate is a bully pulpit. They can go to the news with this. They can go and they can demand that all of the 29 students in quarantine be able to have a student senator's contact info in order to talk about issues that they have or something going on right now, because it's a black hole in there. They don't let anyone talk to them, and they don't tell anyone in there who you guys are and who they can go to for help. And that's just wrong. Student Senate has the money to be able to try to fix things like this. Student Senate has the power to be able to try to fix things like this. This needs to be resolved first in these committees, in full Senate, in these meetings, before we do something like this. Afterwards, fine. You won't hear me complain whatsoever about whatever you're going to fund after these people get their help, after the mold is solved, after the horrible dining plans, there's a safety net for the people who have to suffer under those. Once when those are done, then we can have all the movie nights we want.
Okay, are you okay with us opening up for questions?
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions for Wesley? Okay, Camden, go for it.
Wesley, the problems you identified are fairly pervasive, and I would argue systemic. Do you feel as though the entire proportion of the Senate or available fund is enough to fix these problems? Because I guess I'm confused. Your first opinion was that we need to address food insecurity, but now you're wanting to renovate the dorms. My question is the $40,000 the Senate has to that end?
Cut out. Could you repeat your last sentence, please?
Is the funding available for the Student Senate to allocate for these means sufficient to address the problem?
I believe that for the food insecurity, more than enough. The $8,000 in one of the reserve accounts for the canceled engagement center is almost 1,000 meals in itself, and for the dealing with Naismith and the mold, KU only uses to about 30-ish rooms at a time. Most of the time it's lower than that. So prioritizing the rooms and then just making sure those are clean, or at least have different mattresses, that I'm sure that they have in reserve for other dorms if something goes wrong with another student's mattress in their normal rooms, and just making sure those rooms are decent, that shouldn't be too much. You could probably get KU to pitch in on that itself, as long as you publicly shamed them enough, and then you won't have to shoulder the full bill. And then in that case, yeah, probably. In fact, there'd probably still be a bit left over for social events as well, depending on what our student leaders can negotiate from KU.
Okay, next up it's Brandon, and then we also have a positive speech.
So I assume KU made a contract with Naismith Hall just for putting students in isolation there, because I don't believe KU owns Naismith anymore. It's like a privatized dorm.
They lease the whole building.
They lease the whole building. So I'm sure somewhere in the contract, KU kind of signed up for this. Don't believe that's Student Senate's fault. Have you publicly shamed them by addressing this to the media? This PowerPoint's very gross, and it's pretty gross negligence on KU to sign a contract, or Naismith to create a contract saying that they would isolate students in here safely.
This is the first public appearance of it, because we've been collecting this over the past couple days, and we're hoping to get even more in the coming weeks. And yeah, this is an issue KU needs to address, especially for the isolation. But it's something that Student Senate should have a role in. It's something that Student Senate should be able to come in and both, in order to have the bully pulpit of a public official rather than me, someone who's probably already not popular with certain administrators on campus, complaining about to the media. If we have our student leaders, and especially Student Senate, also coming in on this, also being a part of the negotiation process and representing students, you will be able to get a lot more done than if it's just me. Because I've been hammering about the issues, for example, with the dining hall plans for over a year now, and they've only gotten worse this year. And KU's not going to do anything on its own, but Student Senate now has the power, especially this year. They have expanded powers in order to use their funds.
Okay,
which would make it easier.
With knowing that there's one question on the floor, and there's point of information from Pravon already in the chat, so you guys can read that there. I'm not going to repeat it. There's also a question from Camden, and there's also a positive speech. I would like to recommend a motion to move on to the positive speech, but I will accept.
Yeah, I would like to retract my question.
Okay, it's been retracted. Brandon?
I'd like to retract my motion. Or is it a motion to move on to the positive speech?
Okay, so motion to move on to the positive speech. Can I get, okay, we don't need a second for that. With that, Andrew, you have 3 minutes.
Oh, wow. Well, I'll try to stick to 3 instead of going all the way to 15. But Wesley, I appreciate your passion for these issues and for Student Senate. Not enough students have that passion, so I applaud you for that. That said, I think there are a couple of issues with the points you're making. The first being, I think you're presenting kind of a false dichotomy here, where you're saying that we can either fund these somewhat social events to help people's mental health, which in a crisis is, I know my mental health is frayed, and I know that everyone else is probably frayed as well. So I think that is a very valid use of money. That's a very, very valid use of money too. There's nothing preventing us from working on these other issues and also helping people's mental health by letting them have social events in a campus climate when there's really not much going on. And to speak to that, like the student executive staff and Student Senate is working on these issues, trying to paint it as this picture of inaction is inaccurate, to be frank. I know that, obviously Furkan has been posting in the chat as our policy director. I know that he has been advocating with with, excuse me, with these groups that are responsible for them, not to mention other members of the executive branch or whatever you want to call it, working on other issues related to COVID. So painting that says being inactive is a little inaccurate. Then my final point is just in terms of jurisdiction, like I agree, you know, moldy rooms in Naismith is a big issue. All these are valid issues, but I'm not sure that Finance Committee is the right jurisdiction to be pursuing them. Like, I mean, the goal of Finance Committee in all of like history has been to help student groups by providing them funding. Asking the Finance Committee to suddenly readjust its entire purpose from a student group facing purpose to now trying to fix every issue on campus, from Naismith Hall to the Skull Halls to the Union and everything else, represents a drastic change, which like would require a lot of planning and forethought, which like I also just think there are already avenues to pursue these goals when Finance Committee like historically is not the avenue with which to do it.
Okay, with that, we have a motion to extend by 5 minutes the positive speech, and we already have a second by Lily, and this is icon vote. Go for it, please, and thank you. With that, Andrew, you have 5 more minutes.
Oh, well, I will. I apologize for even requiring one extension, so I will wrap it up real quick here. So I guess just to recap, I think that we can and are doing both by supporting funding groups through Finance Committee, as it has traditionally been their role to do, or your role to do. And we are also, through the executive officers, working and advocating on these issues. So presenting, kind of playing them off together is not entirely accurate. And lastly, just to get back to the bill itself, like the unallocated account has really been depleted at a much slower rate this year than in past years. So opening it up to more student groups to support a greater variety of students and to support them in things that will ultimately help people's mental health by connecting with other people, I think is an admirable goal by Brandon to propose it. So I'll wrap it up there. Open to
with that, Wesley, you have a question?
Yes, I understand your take your complaint somewhere else approach, but what is stopping finance, the committee that controls the money in Student Senate and that anything that has to do with money has to go through, from setting aside some funds, whether it be half or two-thirds or three-quarters or however much this committee decides, and setting that aside, saying we're not going to touch this for now, we're going to save this for this project and for what full senators and the exec staff can negotiate for helping people with food insecurity and with housing issues, for example, in Naismith. What's stopping them besides precedent in unprecedented times where we're literally doing this over Zoom because of a global pandemic, and people suffering from the pandemic get to suffer extra by going to KU? What's stopping us?
So the thing stopping us per se, though it's not stopping other entities of Senate from working on these issues, is the fact that the money is designated to help student groups with their events, projects, and that kind of thing. So again, it's just not within Finance Committee's purview to suddenly transition over to this other role of taking on the issues of everyone across the university.
Okay, Brandon? You're muted.
Sorry, this isn't really a question. I think it's a point of information, or maybe a question of point of information. Didn't we have a special meeting last year, I believe, right before, it was either right when the new administration took place or still under the last administration? We had a special meeting, or a special event basically to put less money in the unallocated funds so we could fund other student type of activities, including jobs and stuff like this, or putting more money into, I believe it was the food pantry. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. So we've kind of done our due diligence in a way. Yeah,
you're entirely accurate there, Brandon. 2 years ago, the unallocated account was at $75,000. A year ago, it was set to start at $60,000, and this year it is starting at $45,000. So it is definitely kind of trending in the direction that you would want already, Wesley.
Okay, and Wesley, do you have another question?
Yes.
Okay.
So first is clarification. I never said finance should take on every issue ever by students. What I asked was that what is stopping finance from having a motion, like let's say right after this bill either passes or fails or gets tabled again, from everyone going into a committee of the whole and then setting aside a certain amount for Student Senate to further use for helping students with either food insecurity or with the mold in the isolation dorm that we have. Because I honestly don't see what's stopping this committee from doing that. Yeah, there's a group for it, but they're not the finance committee. They're not student affairs or student rights or diversity, equity, and inclusion aren't the ones who decide how money is allocated. That would be a position for this place to start. So what's stopping this group from setting aside money, let's say today?
Okay, I think we've had enough discussion on this one, and now it's going to be a motion to call a question probably, if someone can get that for me. From Brandon, second by Sophia. We're going to go ahead and icon vote to call this to question. If you're okay with that, click yes, and then we can go on to a poll vote if this gets approved, which it has been approved, and now it's going to there's going to be a poll. So bill to approve, bill number 2020-008. Okay, with that, this bill passes 12 to 0 and 4. With that, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, which is new business slash discussion. This time around, it's going to be a little bit more guided because we have had over 9 hours of discussion with Watkins. So this is going to be any questions. And just FYI, Rights did untable it, this bill tonight, and I can text Derek real quickly. So if anyone has any specific questions about the Watkins merger, any questions about the ideas that are on the table with Watkins, this is a good time to ask those. But if not, we're going to go ahead and move on to any thoughts you've had about Watkins and the student group financials research group. So I'll be taking in volunteers for that if anyone's wanting to join that work group. So what it's going to entail is going to be a group meeting every other week, probably the off weeks of finance committee, and discussing the results that came out of the research that was done, the questions that student groups answered as they were re-registering to be on affiliated with KU this year. And with that, I totally forgot about, Sarah, your officer report. So if you want to go ahead and get that right now too, this would be a good time. I'm totally sorry about that. I believe she's not there, but so I'll go ahead and open up the floor. So this is a good time to talk about anything Watkins related, and then also the student group research initiative. And those who want to join in with this group, we'll probably create a channel on the Senate teams, and I'll share all of the data that was collected from the 200 student groups. So if you are interested in that, go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll just write your name down, or just put in the chat that you'd like that information sent to you. And I'll give you guys about a minute, and then we can go ahead and move on. Okay. With that, I'm going to go ahead and look. We're going to go ahead and go into announcements. This is a good time for anyone to bring up any events that you guys are doing, any events that student groups on campus are doing. And the floor is open until someone motions to adjourn.
With the motion.
Okay, motion from Sam to adjourn. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second from Jesse. With that, the meeting has been adjourned. So if you guys want to join in 2 weeks in Alderson Auditorium, the best way to do that would be going to Rock Chalk Central and signing up. We had one person here today, Sophia, right? Clap for her. Thank you, everyone. But with that, the meeting has been adjourned, and this is going to be probably our setup for the unforeseeable future. So if you, everybody who did the attendance link should have received an email about just now asking about reflections about and doing a quick feedback question. So if you can complete that, that would be awesome. If you don't want to do it, you're more than welcome not to do it. But we're going to try to automate most of this stuff from now on. But with that, the meeting is adjourned.